In this debut episode of DermBiz, we cover some essential ideas we used when we launched our first dermatology practice. We're starting at the basics, how to start your own dermatology practice. We talk about motivation, why it's vital, and what are the 3 levels of motivation and how to use those 3 different levels of motivations. We also talk about the 3 different practice models. What are they? What are the pros and cons of each model? And how to determine which model you're most suited for. Our mission is to build a supportive and resourceful community of private practice owners. If you want to be a part of that community, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, if you started your own private practice before, we would love to hear your story and your insights on how you did that. Leave a message in the comments below or reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or our email, thedermbiz@gmail.com. Let's get started. Our focus on starting this content and creating this content was because we wanted to scratch our own itch. When we started our first medical practice in 2018, we were able to get information mostly through friends that we knew who started their own practice, a couple of people that we didn't know who we just reached out to, but there was very little information online. It wasn't much of a community that we could really reach out to and tap into. And so we wanted to be able to create that content here. My background is I've been working with high performance teams all my career. I started off playing football in college, played professional football in the NFL. I went to got my degree in college in business and economics. I went to law school and learned a lot about executive side of running and building a practice through law school, and spent a lot of years in sales training and management. And so my passion, the passion and expertise that I bring to our practice is one of leadership and of team building, and specifically of creating a high function and high performance team. So the content that we're going to go over today is really based upon a person who has the aspiration to start their own practice. Maybe they've already started their own dermatology practice, and they're just looking for extra information to help them maximize their opportunity and serve their patients well and serve their team members well, and also have a good experience for themselves. So we're going to go over today the basics of starting a derm practice. And so before we even get into the details of everything, as far as how to start your own practice, we first have to ask the question, who can start a dermatology practice? We're talking about a medical practice that is specific in dermatology. And so Michigan's corporate practice medicine doctrine says that it's a legal principle that prohibits unlicensed individuals or entities from owning medical practices in the state of Michigan. The doctrine serves to protect the public by ensuring that the medical decisions are made by licensed professionals accountable to their respective licensing boards. It's more into that, but the overall gist is you must first be a licensed doctor before you can start your own derm practice. That is first and foremost. So now that we got that out the way, before you start your own practice, you have to dig down to the what's motivating you to start that practice. One of my favorite books is by a gentleman named Simon Sinek. It's called Start With Why. And I believe that book is foundational. It has information that's foundational to anyone who wants to start anything new. And one of the things he talks about is different levels of motivation. And that's also what Abraham Maslow talks about. So the first thing I want to discuss is Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so the first thing we have to talk about before doing anything is what's driving you. I have to give full disclosure right now, because right now it's the sexy thing to do. It's the cool thing to do to be an entrepreneur. But oftentimes people don't tell people the whole entire story. And so the question is, if you're going to start your own practice, are you ready for long nights? Are you ready for working on weekends? Are you ready for missed vacations? Are you ready for dealing with staffing headaches? Are you ready for dealing with accounts receivable and needing to collect money from patients who haven't paid? Are you ready to to box with the insurance companies as they attempt to try to pay you the least amount of money they can and reject claims that they should have paid for? Um, can you deal with unreasonable patients and still have a clear head? Are you okay dealing with the chance of potentially failing? These are some very, very key questions. If you answered yes to all of these questions, then you're probably ready to start a medical practice. If you answer no to more than one or two of those questions, starting your own practice may not be for you. But to dig deeper into seeing whether it's for you or not, we're going to dig into Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so Abraham Maslow, in his hierarchy of needs, the bottom of the needs is basic needs. These are basically economic needs. Most likely, if you're a doctor in residency and about to be a doctor, this is not going to be a motivating factor for you because you can always go get a job and take care of yourself financially. So, money, although many people believe it is, we found personally that money is oftentimes not a strong enough motivator to go through the tough times that is always going to come with starting your own company, specifically starting your own dermatology practice. So the bottom is economic needs. Next up is what he calls psychological needs. This is belongingness. This is esteem, feeling good about yourself because you're part of something. This is definitely way more motivating than financial things. And so maybe you want to start a medical practice because you want to belong to that community of other people who own and operate medical practices. Maybe it's about being able to have very close and tight knit relationships with your employees. Maybe you're working at a place where you don't feel connected, and you want to start your own thing where it's a family atmosphere. Whatever the case may be, psychological needs definitely motivate more than the basic economic needs. But at the top of that pyramid, what creates the most motivation, in my personal opinion, is what Maslow calls self-fulfillment needs. This is you wanting to achieve your full potential. You're working at a place, but you know that you could do and be more. You know that you could create an experience different than what your current patients are experiencing. You know that you could create a workplace that your team would love better than the current workplace you have. You feel like it's something inside you that has to be done, some kind of mission, some kind of cause, some kind of purpose. If you're driven by something like this is the top of motivation, meaning you'll be able to go through the tough times, the difficult experiences, and it won't impact you as deeply. And so, step one of everything, Tolu, is find out what your driving force is. Is it economic? Is it psychological? Or is it something deeper like a mission or a cause? Find out what that is and continually revisit that throughout your process of starting your own practice. So I've broken this down in my head mentally that there's kind of three ways to practice as a dermatologist. You can either be a solo practitioner, kind of a solopreneur, if you will. You're the only doctor, and then you have a supporting cast. You could be kind of create a partnership model, not technically a partnership entity, but where you're partnering with another provider or two, another doctor or other mid levels, and maybe it's two to five providers total. And then the last I would call a growth model. This is when there's, 6+ providers, and, it could get as big as you want it to be. Think big private equity groups, think big medical organizations where, there may be, 5, 10, 15 different locations and a bunch of different providers. So what I'll do is I'll drill down back on each one of those areas specifically. So the first is being a solo practice owner and operator. There's some pros to this and there's some cons to this. The pro is when you create this model, you have an opportunity to design your perfect job. This is how we started at Lilly Dermatology. This is how we started our practice with my wife. My wife was the doctor, and she was kind of like the sun, and we all orbited around her. Our job was to help her do her job, basically. Our job was to be the support of everything that she needed to do. So I handled HR, I handled business, the business side. I handled, a lot of these different things in the beginning. I took all of the phone calls, I scheduled all of the appointments, and then we had nurses who did a certain role, and we kind of were her support staff, if you will. However, the con is this is technically not a business. This kind of model is not necessarily owning your own business, it's owning your own job. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, you can never sell a job. No one wants to come and buy a job. So your ability to be able to sell your practice one day is very limited unless you find someone else who also wants to be a solopreneur, who also wants your staff. And so it's a very small box of people who will potentially want to buy that practice. To drill down a little bit further on the partnership model, the pro with the partnership model is it truly is a business. This is something where you could go on vacation and the business is still running and operating. This is something where it's a point in time in your journey where the amount of income that you earn and produce as a provider is now being surpassed by the other members of your team. And so it's not just all about you. So the pressure is kind of alleviated a little bit on your own individual performance. The con to this to the partnership model is you have to now start to think about non-medical things. You have to now start thinking about business things and management things and conflict resolution and making sure you have different personalities who are on the same page. You are now 1 foot in the medical world and 1 foot in the executive and entrepreneurial world. For some people, that's great and they love it. But for the person who wants to show up every day and do their medical work and go home, they may not love it as much. And in that situation, they have to hire a very, very, very strong and experienced office manager or find someone else who has that skill set that they can partner with. Last but not least is the growth model. This is where you have a big group. Typically, it's going to be more than one person who owns this kind of group. It could be 10, 15, 20, 30 different locations. It could be an unlimited number of providers. And in this model, the pro is this is the model that is truly built to sell. I have a good friend of mine who runs a dental practice that's similar to this. I believe he has 10 or 15 locations. This is the kind of model that's built to sell. He literally is getting reached out to on a weekly basis by private equity companies offering him, sending him offers on wanting to buy his business. So if you're looking to build a business to sell one day, this is definitely the model you want to go. The bigger you can get, the higher multiple you can receive when you do sell to another company, to another buyer. And so it's a huge upside in profitability and one day having, a big liquidity event, as they call it, getting a big lump sum of money from your practice. However, the con is it has the same challenges from a management standpoint as the partnership model, but even more so, right? Systems become very, very important when you got 10 or 15 different providers. The ability to be able to think systematically, the ability to be able to think on a grand scale and figure out how all of the parts and pieces work together. At this point, you're most likely doing more of the entrepreneurial and executive side than you are doing the medical side, just because of the demands that it would take to run such an organization. I mean, when you start having 10 or 15 different providers, you easily have 30, 40, 50 different employees. And so with that level of organization, it's going to require somebody to have their finger on the pulse on what's going on from a business side, from a management side, from an operation side on a day-to-day basis. So those would be the 3 ways on how to start the practice that I would recommend people to kind of think through. So I think that's going to be a personal preference. I can tell you what we did. So my wife did her residency in New York City. I'm originally from Michigan. And so we made the decision that we were going to start our practice in Michigan. I mean, that she was going to start her career in Michigan. And that eventually led us to Marquette, Michigan, small college town in Upper Peninsula, Michigan. My wife worked for one of those growth model style practices for a few years, and throughout that time, she just made the decision that she decided she wanted to start her own practice. She had a level of motivation that was at the top of the triangle. She deep down inside had a passion for creating a great experience for people. She felt like she could do more. She felt like she wasn't using all of her gifts and abilities working for as an employee for this growth model style company. And so she decided to start her practice right where we were at. Now, her decision to start her practice in Marquette was very much based upon the fact that she had been serving that community for years and already had a patient base who who was more so committed to her than they were to the practice that she worked for. And so that's a very, very key point on a person who's thinking of starting their own practice. If you're currently working for a practice now and you're providing great care at that practice, you may have already started your own practice and not realized it, because many of those individuals, if you're doing an excellent job of serving them, they're going to follow you to the next place that you go. And so that's step one. If you're providing excellent service in the current market, there's a very high likelihood that you have already, and you want to start your own practice in that market. There's a very high likelihood that you've already started your own practice, and many of those people will follow you. Now, mind you, you can't solicit those people based upon the contract that you've signed. You can't solicit patients. You can't solicit staff, and you may be operating under a covenant not to compete or a restricted covenant. And so your individual situation is going to the details of your situation is going to determine where you go. But we started right where we were already at, so that's how we picked where we were going to start our practice. Absolutely. So the next step to take would be to determine what services are you going to provide in your practice. You have some practices who specialize in cosmetics. You have some practices who specialize in surgery. Some practices do just all general dermatology. Some do a mix of all three. What your practice is going to provide is it should be based upon the skill set of the doctor, what they're passionate about, what they're good at, and also it should reflect the market that you decide to go into. Like, if you're going to be in New York City, you're going to be hard pressed to have a practice that doesn't have some kind of cosmetic component, right? If you're going to be, in Scottsdale, Arizona, a place with tremendous amounts of sun, most likely there's going to be some skin cancer treatments. And whether you're a board certified, whether you're a mole surgeon or not, it's going to play a role in that. If you're not a mole surgeon, meaning a surgeon who specializes in treating skin cancer, then you want to make sure you partner with a mole surgeon in your area. So those are the areas that you really want to focus on and dig down into. What mix of general dermatology, cosmetics, and mole surgery are you going to be doing at your practice? That's a good question. They don't have to stick to a specific thing. There are some training limitations. If you're not trained as a Mohs surgeon, you're not going to be able to do it. So you have to be trained as a Mohs surgeon to do that. But whether you're going to be heavy in cosmetics, heavy in general dermatology, that's going to be a personal preference. And again, that's going to be based upon the market demand, the reputation that you create for yourself in that specific area. We found that word of mouth is very, very powerful when it comes to practicing, and so what you become known for will very much be your calling card. For example, my wife, she's known for, well, she's kind of amazing at everything, but she's known for cosmetics and surgery. Those are kind of her calling cards. People know that when it comes to cosmetic derm, when it comes to surgical derm, mole surgery, excisions, removal of lipomas, whatever the case may be. They know that she, she specializes in that area. So she gets a lot of patients who come see her for those reasons. Absolutely, absolutely. So, I have a couple of books that I would recommend. These books are not specific. They're not even medical practice specific. They are business specific. And so the first would be The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. That book is going to give you the mindset on what it means to be a solo practitioner, a solopreneur, and how to make that change and why to make that change, or if you should even make that change. The next is a book called Profit First. This is an amazing book that's going to address your balance sheet, your profit and loss, how to manage your financial resources as money comes in, what buckets to put money in. I think it's almost like getting an MBA in accounting and finance for a small business owner. The next is the book called The Magic of Thinking Big by Dr. David Schwartz. This book is very important because it helps work on the mindset that's required to start your own practice and to be an entrepreneur. I've read that book probably 10 or 15 times, an amazing book. And the last one, the one that I've referenced a few times already, is the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. It's going to help you be able to communicate your messaging to your team, to your staff. It's going to help you be able to clarify your message to your patients. And also, when you're confused about what to do, what not to do, it'll help you be able to ask the right questions of yourself to make sure that you're making the right decision. Starting your own practice can be lonely sometimes because you're making these decisions, and oftentimes you can't get feedback or input from your staff. You can get feedback or input from the competition around you. So a book like Start With Why, it gives you a good foundation so you can take counsel with yourself and take counsel with the author of the book when you're making those tough and difficult decisions. If you have any ideas on specific topics that you would like us to make an episode about, feel free to share that with us. Right in our YouTube comments, reach out to us on our social medias. All of that will be up on the screen. If you got specific things that you want us to do a deep dive in, we want this show to be a resource to the entrepreneurs, the owner-operators of dermatology clinics. And so, we'll be making content that helps serve that purpose. And we believe that it's enough opportunity for all of us to win together. And so we want to share everything that we can, all the mistakes that we made, all the lessons that we've learned, so everybody can win together. Because if we all collectively win, we believe that we provide better care for our patients. Because I believe that small business and small practices have an opportunity to provide better care, and we have an opportunity to provide a better work environment for our team members. Because I believe that small practices have an advantage to these big, huge hospital systems that kind of suck the soul out of the work environment. We can provide something that has way more meaning and a lot more enjoyable.
What other specific topics related to the business of private practice management would you like for us to cover? Please share in the comments below or reach out to us on social media or our email address, thedermbiz@gmail.com. Our mission is to create a movement of collaboration and support amongst physician-owned private practice owners. If you would like to join that movement, again, don't forget to like, share, comment, and please don't forget to subscribe.